Okay, number 7, Tennessee, 10.5-point favorites against Vandy. The over-under I have is 5 yards per play for Vandy. That's what the Doors are averaging after the Alabama win. 6-game sample size, that's not great. It's not. If you're Marcus Satterfield and don't know yards per play very well, that's decent. That's kind of right in that meaty curve. But no, for the rest of us, that's not particularly good. Just know that 5 yards per play would be bottom 15 nationally if it were a season-long stat. It is not. How much of that is because I think that Pavia and Stowers, their two best offensive players, are both banged up? A pretty good amount. I think that's got a lot to do with that. By the way, 5 yards per play allowed would actually be a bad performance by this Tennessee defensive standard this year. 4.3 yards per play allowed this year. That does drop, or I guess raise, to 4.9 yards per play that's allowed against SEC opponents. In their 2 losses, Tennessee has allowed 6.1 yards per play. In their 9 wins, Tennessee has allowed 3.9 yards per play. Pretty significant. Significant. Efficiency is the name of the game here, I think, for both of these teams. Vandy has really struggled with getting those chunk plays. And for whatever reason, they haven't really tried that much. I know they had the first play of the game against LSU, but it's been kind of few and far between with taking those shots downfield, maybe exposing Diego Pavia to punishment. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe just doesn't have the arm strength to be able to stretch the field consistently. That could be part of it as well. But think about this. This is a Vandy offense that, as much praise as we've given it, is still 124th in FBS in scrimmage plays of 20 yards. I don't think in this one Diego Pavia is going to be a high volume runner, because if he was going to be a high volume runner in this week, why wasn't he last week? Coming off of the bye week, only 6 rushing attempts against that LSU defense that we knew struggled mightily against the quarterback run. Yet this was a guy that, entering that LSU game, had at least 12 rushing attempts in every game this year. So that to me was very, very telling. Tennessee's run defense been a little bit weird because the 2 worst games that they've had defending the run were against Kentucky and Mississippi State, both at home. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Maybe this is another one of those games. Maybe this is another one of those games in which Diego Pavia shocks the world. That we absolutely cannot rule that out. I think the spread sort of reflects that. And I think that finally Vegas was like, oh yeah, Vandy, pretty good. And then now all of a sudden they can't cover a spread. But I think Vandy's been a different team offensively. And while Vandy's defense is 2 touchdowns per game better than it was last year, a big part of this and what Clark Lee has done taking over that defense, this is 100% an empty the tank game for Dylan Samson. Doak Walker Award snub Dylan Samson. He's going to be... I think Dylan Samson's going to be on.
Doak Walker watch list.
No, Doak Walker finalist.
Finalist, yeah. I'm like, hold on. We know who the winner is going to be. Yeah.
Yeah. With all due respect to Hampton, Johnson, and Genty, and those 3 guys who are great players, I take Dylan Samson overall, but one of them. Sorry. That's just reality. Alternative over-under for this one, 30 scrimmage touches for Dylan Samson. I mean, it could be one of those games. Not playing in the SEC championship, that's Tennessee, and potentially 3 weeks to be able to rest after this one, and you have to win this to get into the playoff. Okay, there's a world in which Dylan Samson and Tennessee, they try and go full like 2015 Derrick Henry, late season 2015 Derrick Henry, and that would not surprise me. Do you remember Derrick Henry's stat lines for the Iron Bowl and the SEC championship when Bama needed to win both to make the playoff, Will?
I love Derrick Henry. Yes. I've always rooted for Derrick Henry. Yeah.
This man, in the regular season finale, after he's the workhorse back all year against Auburn, 46 carries for 271 yards. Oh, hey, Derrick, you tired? Like, you okay? You feeling good, Derrick? Yeah, I'm good. I'm all right. Let me get some Gatorade. No, I don't even need Gatorade. I don't need electrolytes. Just give me some water. I'll be fine.
Here's the thing about Derrick Henry real quick. He was in Yulee, Florida, and people were like, this guy's not a 5-star recruit. He can't do this in the SEC. He comes to the SEC, and he does it in the SEC. And they're like, this guy's not a first-round draft pick. He can't do this in the NFL. And then he goes to the Titans, and he does it in the NFL. And they're like, oh, this guy, he's washed. He's going to the Ravens. He's not any good. He can't do this in the Ravens. At what point do we just start putting some respect on Derrick Henry? Because he's done it 6 times now. Anyway.
Derrick Henry, Travis Hunter, study them for science. We have to. Because what he has done in his entire career, and even go back and add the high school rushing attempts to his workload, it is unbelievable. I mean, it might end up being the single most used running back in the
The most
history of
carries
football.
for a human being. Yeah.
Yeah, because even Herschel, like I know Herschel got a million carries, obviously high school and college, but then like gets to the NFL and then ends up being used more in the passing game as well. But by the way, Derrick Henry in the SEC championship had 44 carries for 189 yards. So in a 2-week stretch, so in 8 days, consecutive Saturdays, this man combined for 90 carries.
I remember the yards. I remember the carries. That is a season and then some. Wow.
Dylan Samson is going to get some work. He's going to get some work coming off of a game in which he got least amount of work that he's had all year. I think a very pissed off Dylan Samson shows up and leads Tennessee. No Diego Pavia madness. I'm going against my better judgment. I will say that Diego Pavia cannot pull off another miracle. I'm going to say the Vols grind out like a 27-13 win and all but clinch a playoff spot.
Yeah. As much as we've made of Diego Pavia, I think that this matchup is definitely one on the other matchup, like the other side of the ball, because I mean, this right now should be kind of a nightmare matchup for Vandy, just to be honest. With Tennessee's D-line and the physicality they play with and just kind of the completeness of that defense, the injury to Diego Pavia, the fact that he can't really trust his legs, can't really trust his arm. Like, I don't think this is going to be a game that Vandy wins the way they won Alabama. The game's up in the 30s and 40s, and we're all freaking out, throwing up touchdowns. But when we talk about yards per play, I do want to caution that's something that we keyed in on, or that's just kind of been obvious about Tennessee. Because if you look at the non-SEC games for Tennessee, right? Chattanooga, 69 points. NC State, 51 points. Kent State, 71 points. The other day, UTEP, 56 points. Then you get into the SEC. So when you talk about like season-long stats, yeah, I'm sure their yards per play is awesome. But in the SEC, okay, they scored 33 against Mississippi State. It's Mississippi State, right? But they have not really been the type of offense to pull away from teams.
Yeah, I meant defensively. That would the
No, for sure. And you keyed in on that, like for Vandy offensively and for Tennessee defensively. I'm talking about it for Tennessee offensively. You know what I'm saying? Because I was trying to compare and contrast these teams. I'm thinking to myself, I wonder what that stat would be for Tennessee, like in the SEC games. I'm not gonna do a bunch of math right here.
You don't have to do a bunch of math. CFBstats.com.
There you go.
That's got you.
But yeah. And so like point being, like their offense has looked kind of night and day different in the SEC. Now, granted, it's improved a little bit lately. Again, some of that comes with matchups, playing soft defenses like Kentucky, Mississippi State, Alabama, right? Like that can really get your offense going, and I understand that. But I think that for this game, you're right. I think you need to lean on Dylan Samson and like control this game and get ahead early and just put Vandy away. Like that's something we haven't really seen Tennessee do a ton of in these style of games. Like I guess the Oklahoma game, they got up early. They didn't really put them away. You know what I'm saying? So I think especially for a Tennessee team that, is sitting in a great position for the playoff, that physically just cannot lose this game. We saw them lose a game like this in 2022, right? This is a game that they just need to look like a playoff team, look like a contender. Let's not play around with Diego Pavia, who just got, frustrated by the LSU defense, who is much worse than you.
Don't have to look like a playoff team. Just have to win. Have to win. Doesn't matter. I've been saying for a while, I don't think Tennessee style points matter. I really don't.
But you don't want to get into a dogfight with Diego Pavia. That's my point. Like this Tennessee offense should just control the Vandy defense, and it shouldn't be a Diego Pavia conversation.
Yeah. By the way, Tennessee 5.17 yards per play against SEC competition this year. That's 12th out of 16 SEC teams.
See, that's great. About what I was expecting. But because these out of conference games,
slightly just behind Tennessee in SEC play, Vandy 5.03 yards per play. Yeah, it's look, it's not necessarily been the explosive group that we thought it could be. So being able to win games like this, it just looks different. But Tennessee's comfortable kind of playing in that, I think. I do think that there's a world in which they're fine getting into a dogfight of sorts in which they have a touchdown lead and they can protect that. And they've learned how to play in some of these games and not panic. And it's not a defense that's going to freak out. I mean, it's not a defense that's going to freak out even if they have a scoreless first half, because Lord knows they had 3 of those in the middle of the season and went 2-1 in those games. So I think that's the positive for Tennessee. I think they very much understand what's at stake. I think there's more than enough to look at Diego Pavia's body of work and say, this is what we should expect. And this is a matchup that we feel like we know what we have to do to be able to contain him. Maybe easier said than done, but Tennessee should be able to get the job done and make sure that the SEC is not a two-bid league, because that's what's possible.
I got them by 2 scores, scoring in the 30s. If they made Josh Williams look like Derrick Henry, Tennessee's got Dylan Samson.
This is true.